to the same. DiversiPride 2020 is a 30-day campaign which comprises a multitude of events like an open mic, Instagram and YouTube lives, an open forum book discussion, and movie screening. So now we will be presenting a video that encompasses what Aspirant is all about.
I make a difference realizing that I'm doing something different. But we are conditioned in a society which wants us to do something different. But when we do something different, we are viewed as very, very, very different.
The Indian education system has given various contributions to the world. These include Ayurveda, Yoga, Takshila, the Nalanda University and the Vedic education system. It has even taught the world how to calculate and to measure. But with the fast growing development of time, we forgot how to keep up with it and forgot the real meaning of quality education. Aspirant Learning provides a platform to students to transcend boundaries of our course syllabi and resort to unconventional and interactive measures, which help them not just learn academic proficiency, but also become a stepping stone for their holistic development. At Aspirant, we teach them skill-based education and we make them the better citizens of tomorrow.
Is the key is indeed a motto heard by many but practiced by a few. connecting rural and urban stagnation in the sector, which stands our motto. Aspirant Learning has endeavored the path of bringing the change and making the vision as a mission. That is, enabling education to every child while bridging up the idea of quality education to one and all and providing its access to everyone. One step at a time is what we believe in. Hereafter, working with you, by you, and for you towards enabling SDG 4 is where we would stand with United Nations, covering 6 states of India as of now and aiming towards a better world in terms of education.
Wow, Aspirant has indeed come a long way. We will be now starting with the moderated Q&A and the floor will be later open to the audience to share their opinions. Before beginning, we'd like to mention the rules and procedures for the open forum discussion. We'd request everyone to switch on your videos and keep yourself on mute and rename yourself as your name only.
Each speaker has to raise their hands once asked for recognition and will speak in a particular order of recognition.
You all are requested not to interrupt in between when another speaker is speaking.
Each speaker will get a time span of 3 to 4 minutes each.
When the reaction of an alarm clock will be given by one of the anchors, it means that the speaker should wind up.
No personal attacks or comments on the experiences and views of the other speakers will be entertained.
It is also requested to share experiences that you have faced yourself, and if you are highlighting incidents of someone else, please share with their consent.
No statements against a particular caste, religion, gender, or a particular set of groups will be allowed.
In case of any disturbances or malpractices, we would be forced to remove you from the open forum.
Moving on. Love, true burning love, was synonymous with the self-inflicted pain, and there was only so long that the pain could be endured. With this, we welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Farhad, to say a few words. Farhad has been an entertainment and lifestyle journalist for over 20 years. Born and based in Mumbai, India, he has several senior editorial positions, including at DNA newspaper, as launch editor at the international men's magazine FMH, and currently at the Leela magazine. His debut novel, How I Got Lucky, Penguin Random House, was satire on India's celebrity culture, and his forthcoming novel, The Other Man, Lake Union Publishing, is an urban gay rom-com set in Mumbai. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. I like you mentioned, I've been a lifestyle and entertainment journalist for over 20 years now. And so I've seen, pretty much the going-ons in and out. And that's how I wrote my first book, frankly, which was a satire on Indian celebrity culture. The new book that we're discussing today, which is already out actually, is The Other Man, which is a gay rom-com set in Mumbai, the first one actually to be published internationally. So it'll be interesting to talk about how far, the topic of the discussion was the changing landscape of queer literature. And that would be really interesting to talk about in this perspective for sure.
Thank you, sir. Now coming to your book, The Other Man, I'd request you to read the blurb to the audience.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've read my own blurb, so give me a minute and I'll get it going. Okay, so here's the book for everybody to see the cover, which is a really nice, vibrant, lively cover that, went into a lot of, when choosing a cover, you go into a lot of discussions actually on what you want it to look like, especially when it's an LGBTQ novel, because you don't want cliches, you don't want something that seems offensive. And this really worked out wonderfully. This was exactly what I had in mind. But so getting to the blurb, a heartwarming and transporting romantic comedy about finding happy ever after on your own terms. Heir to his father's Mumbai business empire, Ved Mehra has money, looks, and status. He's also living as a closeted gay man, 38, lonely, still reeling from a heartbreak, and under pressure from his exasperated mother, like so many men. Ved agrees to an arranged marriage. He regrettably now faces a doomed future with the perfectly lovely Disha Kapoor. Then Wade's world is turned upside down when he meets Carlos Silva, an American on a business trip in India, and falls madly in love. As preparations for his wedding get into full swing, Wade finds himself drawn into a relationship he never could have imagined and ready to take a bold step. Wade is ready to embrace who he is and declare his true feelings regardless of family expectations and staunch traditions. But with his engagement party just a few days away, and with so much at risk, Wade will have to fight for what he wants if it's not already too late to get it. And that's it.
Thank you, sir. It was an amazing to read, I must say. It was very easy to read, navigate through, especially for someone like me who does not read rom-coms a lot. Like, this brings me to my first question. What motivated you to write The Other Man?
So, the whole idea was that I wanted this book to be a celebration of love. Love forms the basis of so many things for all of us, right? And I just wanted the story to be about two men from totally different parts of the world, different cultures, different ethnicities, different ages, but who are bound by one thing, which is love, and how each helps the other find the best version of themselves. We haven't had a gay rom-com ever, which has been set in Mumbai. And I just felt it was about time because, growing up, I read so many books with heterosexual love stories. We've seen so many movies based on books in it. But we haven't seen any gay rom-coms, that really come out from books. And I was like, why is that? Because a lot of books that I read, a lot of gay novels that I read, international authors, great big literary names, they always had something very unhappy at the basis of their book. Someone died, someone went through a heartbreak, someone fell sick, someone got married and left them, all these sort of stories, which always at the end of the day as a gay man made you feel, oh my God, like being gay is a tragedy, but it's not. There's so much of happiness. There's so many great relationships. There's so much of love. And I just felt, why not have a book that celebrates love, especially since Section 377 was knocked down? It was high time. So this is really like a celebration for that, but as well as being a celebration of love overall.
Yeah, like the journey of Wade from becoming how he was before he met Carlos and after he met Carlos is like really great, and it really showed how love as an emotion and like how it can affect someone's life. Right? So like, are there any real life characters in the book that you took inspiration from?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the thing is, all writers, whether they admit to it or not, some say we don't, but every writer always draws from experiences around them. How else can we do that, right? So it could be based on people, it could be based on experiences you've had, it could be based on stories you've heard. That's how I wrote my first book, and also how I wrote the second book, But with this book, what I really wanted to portray was one, of course, the whole thing about coming out, how difficult it is. People don't understand that. It is a very difficult process for a gay man or woman who's thinking about coming out. There's so many questions in their mind that go on all the time. You feel so weighed down. And, that's what I wanted to bring out really. In my own journey, a lot of the instances that are in the book are from my own journey, which I've sort of faced and, felt and sort of brought that into it. And then something which is actually not something I've faced, but I've heard a lot of other stories about other gay men who've been pushed into arranged marriages. And that was something I wanted to talk about for sure, because I felt that's something so peculiar to India that happens so often. And I've heard countless stories of gay men who, unfortunately they want to be dutiful sons, they want to keep their parents happy. That's how we've been brought up, right? And because of that, sometimes we do that at the cost of our own happiness, and so a lot of that was where I'd heard stories, where I'd heard incidences, where I'd heard, people's accounts of it, how someone even came out to his father before, getting married, but the father said, but now you'll be normal, now you'll be fine, your wife will make you fine. And, these are all things that are not true at all, and it leads to a lot of unhappiness eventually for everyone, because the wife is never happy because she knows something not right in the marriage. The husband is never happy because he's not really found true love. And the parents are never happy because they see the kids unhappy. So it's a no-win situation for everybody, and I really wanted to highlight that how important that aspect is and that needs to be spoken about, in addition to, of course, coming out, which is really the first step.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. We as straight people can understand what people from the community go through. And like you really well clearly highlighted how, I mean, not coming out brings a lot of isolation. Coming out brings a lot of isolation and alienation. So like there's not a win-win situation, especially in a country like India
True.
where people are very, yeah. So I mean, like so you, like you said that you have written the book from your personal experiences. Like, does the title mean anything to you, or
The title
what
is
made you
something.
name it the other?
Think of it. Yeah. So the title is, for so long, we've always heard about the other woman, right? We've heard about the other woman who comes and breaks up a marriage or has an affair with the husband or something like that, right? That's such a commonly heard term. But in this case, it was pretty much the other man, right? Here comes somebody who is, falls in love with the groom-to-be, so to speak, and changes his whole world upside down. And I just thought that was an interesting title, an interesting play on words. And I felt it represented what the book was really about. And I also feel it's something that, I see and hear about a lot nowadays, a lot of men are, when they're considering marriage, they so happen to come across somebody that they really are in love with. They are in this quicksand situation, One foot is, do I keep my parents happy? Do I, keep everything going well for my family? Nobody talks about it. The other foot is like, do I fight for my happiness? Do I fight for the person I love? Do I fight for my own future? For leading my own best life. So that's really where the title came about, like a play on words, really.
Right. Interesting indeed. Like you said about, you mentioned future. So like, what was your journey as an author in India?
Oh God, that's a huge question. So I've been a journalist, right? And I think within every journalist, especially critics, because I've done book reviews, I've done film reviews and things like that. But especially within every journalist, I think there's always that inkling to be an author someday. They might not admit it, but I think everybody inside harbors that wish to be an author someday. So I always felt that before I turned 40, I must write my first book. And that's how the first book came about. I was like, I have to do it before I turn 40. It's sort of like it could be too late to do it. You'll never get down to it. And, then the second book came about much easier. The thing, Rajshree, is that, there are different ways about writing a book, right? I mean, in terms of a journey. With the first book, I never had an agent. The second book, I had a US-based agent, which made things much easier for me. Because you have somebody to discuss things with, you have somebody to throw ideas to and, get their opinion on. Because being an author, you pretty much, everything is in your own head, right? All the thoughts are in your own head. And I'm sure there are lots of people who are watching this who themselves have diaries or written little things or are, wish to be authors someday and are thinking about it themselves, And what the advice I'd really say for anybody who's thinking about it is just write your book. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about who'll read it. Even if 2 people read it and are touched by it, you've won. Honestly, I mean, it doesn't matter that 1 lakh people have read it or not. If 2 people have been moved by your book, that's all that really matters for you, because that's what you write for eventually. You write for readers and you want them to be moved by your story. You want them to be inspired by your story or learn from your story or be engaged by your story. So just write your book, put on a 500-word synopsis of what your book is about, and then just get on to writing your book. Move from writing in your diaries and scribbles and things like that, because even I used to do that. I'd write on little napkins certain thoughts that came in, and then I'd collect all of them and then try and put it all together, And I think every author starts that way. You have these little things that you do, but just put it down, write it, and then there's a different process. Then there's the publishing process, and then once that happens, there's the marketing process, which are 2 different things altogether. But I have to say the second book was a very different journey for me because I had an agent and things were much easier. Things were, I could discuss things. Otherwise you're pretty much on your own when you're just writing on your own, right? And even with friends, it's difficult. Sometimes you don't want to tell your friends you're writing a book. Some people prefer to keep quiet about it. So it really depends,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Plus, we have, I can say this for sure, we have quite a lot of writers from our own.
I'm sure, and I hope so, because you all are the youth, Yeah, and I really feel the youth have to give us like great new stories of how things are changing, what is really happening on their end, how they're seeing it, right? I mean, that's how you keep feeding literature, by bringing in new stories, new perspectives, new ideas that come into it. So I really hope so. I hope, people are inspired and they get down to just putting a 500-word synopsis together and then writing that book. And then after that, it's a pretty simple process. Everything's online. You send your manuscript to publishers online and they all respond to you. Whether yes or no is a separate thing, but they will all tell you yes or no. And then after that, it's the marketing process, which is promoting the book and all, which they'll only guide you on. So it's a pretty streamlined process in India, frankly. That's what I did. I didn't know anyone in publishing. I just sent it out online, with my first book. And then, which is the hardest part, actually, because then when you're waiting for that email from a publisher, I think that's the most difficult part of being an author, because you're like, oh my God, is it going to be yes or is it going to be no? Or are they going to write back? But trust me, they all write back. They all will write back to you and tell you yes or no about it, which is good.
Absolutely. Plus, writing is just magical. But like you mentioned, the publishing and all. So, what do you think? Like, was it really hard to get it published in India, or how the process was? Like, how the publishing industry in India is general towards queer people and queer writers?
Yeah. So, see, in this case, the second book was an internationally published book, so it was published internationally, and then Westland, which was the publishing house out here, were interested in publishing for India. It does not always happen that way. There's several books that are published internationally that unfortunately don't get picked up in India. That all depends on the publishing house. They feel that maybe the story works for them or doesn't work for them. But something that I really want to say, and I think really needs to be spoken about more, is that we have dime a dozen literary festivals today, right? In every city, there's a literature festival happening all the time. But how many of them have a discussion on LGBTQ topics and stuff like that, like you all are doing? Like, I'm so glad you all are doing this, it's so important. Like, how many people are doing that? I mean, one or two at the most. They'll bring down these big international gay writers, but they'll never talk to them about their journey. They'll talk to them about something else. So, and Rajeshri, the thing is that if the more that it's spoken about, the more writers will want to write about these themes, the more publishers will want to pick up these stories, and it's one big circle. And the more that gets spoken about, you know what I mean? It's one circle that goes around. So I think that's what's really the need of the hour. Our literature festivals need to wake up and say, you know what, there is a trickle. There's not a lot. There are a couple of LGBTQ books happening every year. Why not have at least one good discussion on it? Just like you all are doing it, why not talk about it? And that leads to more writers wanting to write on it, more publishers wanting to pick up manuscripts. And, that's how you feed the publishing industry, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, making a new normal for people. So just talking about it, it's the first step to anything, really.
Yeah, and there's so many stories, Rajyasree, like we still don't have a bisexual character in a book as yet. Well, we don't have any bisexual poetry. We don't have any non-binary poetry. We don't have any non-binary fiction. I mean, there's so many sections. We don't have a memoir about somebody who's non-binary. I mean, there's so much that still needs to be written. And that's really, I'm hoping the youth, picks that up and says, yes, we want to write our stories. We want to talk about our stories. This is how things are changing, and I really hope publishers realize that this is what people do want to read about. People want to understand. They're interested in these subjects. If it's fiction, they're interested in the story around it. If it's a memoir, they're interested in people's lives about it, how it affects them, the difficulties, the loneliness, the pressures, all of that goes into it, So I really hope that comes about. And I really hope the youth pushes that, because we need to hear your stories. We need to know, what's happening at your end too,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we need to be more than allies. We need to now create a proper space for people. So this makes me think about like how you deal with criticism, sort of, because I mean, it must be very different because it's an LGBT book, and like it's not something that it's not heteronormative that people are very used to. So how do you deal with criticism?
So, I've been a critic, right? So I know what it's like to write a really bad review, and you're just like, oh my God, but I have a very strong theory, which I use in journalism, that if a book or a movie or a music album, if something I really don't like at all, if I just hate it, I don't review it. Because I truly feel something must be wrong with me internally to not even be able to gauge one good thing about it. It's not possible. Everybody writes a book or does a film with a couple of good things in it. They put in their blood and sweat into it, right? Now, if you don't get that as a reviewer, it means that maybe you're missing out on something. Maybe you need to look a little deeper and maybe not review that at all, because you're not getting the person's vision. You have to see what the author is trying to tell you, right? That's what a book is about. You have to try and understand what the author. So in terms of criticism, that's what I did with journalism. Of course, I've had, a lot of criticism with both books, but I think I was more sensitive with the first book. With the second book, I've just been more, it's okay. It's a point of view. Everybody has a point of view, but there's been nothing very harsh. There's been nothing, the one criticism is a lot of women felt that Wade having to lie to his fiance, his wife to be, was something they didn't like, and I totally understand that. But that is exactly what happens if you're a closeted gay man who's getting into an arranged marriage. You do lie because your whole life is a lie, right? As a closeted man, your whole life is a lie. And the biggest betrayal is that you're lying to yourself all the time, So that is something that really does happen. But otherwise, I've not really faced any. In fact, I've got a lot of love. I've got some great feedback from a lot of people. A lot of gay people around the world have written in. Something that really stayed with me was when one guy wrote to me and said that if this book saves one life, that will mean everything, because there's so many cases of suicide that happen, right? By those who cannot come out or who have a very dark, they can't handle the darkness of the journey anymore, and that's so unfortunate. And that's the idea of queer literature also, right? It's meant to empower you. It's meant to make you see that, what, things will get better. If you fight for what you truly believe in, if you fight for yourself and fight for love, or just fight for your own internal self, things will get better, So there's been tons of feedback. There's been, really with the second book, there's just been wonderful feedback, frankly. So that balances out everything. It's the law of gravity. What goes up must come down. So it's pretty much okay with me.
No, absolutely. I mean, like even in the book, how you mentioned, of course, how the experience of a closeted gay man is, but like you also mentioned the platform Grindr, and how there are how people, it's also unsafe within the community sometimes, how other gay men blackmail people from the community and all. But what you said, what's going to stay with me is if you really hated something, you don't review it. I mean, we imply it to our own lives in a very small manner, so it would be really good, be very peaceful for it indeed. But talking about your book, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
It's even when I was reading the book, so there were these slight undertones of how Indian society, I mean, not in regards to when it comes to the LGBTQ community, but even otherwise, how there's a difference between the privileged and underprivileged, and how we don't simply appreciate the little things in life, right? How Wade used to be very, just into the materialistic things, but after Carlos showed him, walking in the streets of Mumbai and all. So was it something that you put intentionally, or was it just this way?
No, it was completely intentional. I wanted the city of Mumbai to be like a character in the book, and I wanted to show the glitzy, glamorous side of the city, because I felt a lot of writing that's there on India and that's there on Mumbai never really talks about that aspect. It concentrates on the poverty, it concentrates on some other socio-economic issue. But I was like, why isn't anybody celebrating the fact that this is a 24/7 city? It's bustling. It's a hot nerve center for India. There's Bollywood and there's politicians and everybody's here, sort of, these trendy people and stuff like that, foreigners coming down. And I was like, why isn't anybody talking about the malls and that whole culture? But I'll tell you what the real reason for putting Wade in such a rich setup was that a lot of people think that if you're rich or if you're privileged, it's easier to come out, which is not true at all. It's difficult irrespective of what your social strata is. In fact, it can sometimes be more difficult when you're from a privileged class, because if your father owns the company, then you're constantly thinking about that pressure. Like, if I come out, then what will all the employees think? So there are a lot. I wanted to bring out those trappings.
Yeah, you're
You know?
constantly in the spotlight.
Yeah, and it's true, like Carlos.
You make
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, and like Carlos does make him reconnect with the smaller things of just like going out to a coffee shop, because Veda's led such a closeted life in a certain sense. He's always scared about where he's going, who he's going to be seen with. So he's not really even enjoying the city. It's like we all become so used to a pattern, right? We move from car to office to home, car to, you know what I mean? We sometimes forget about the smaller things of just going for a walk on the sea face, or just having a vada pav somewhere, or just going somewhere for a coffee. Very often we get used to routines, and I think Carlos reopens his eyes to the beauty of the city in some sense, what it really holds.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like we just mindlessly continue with the same monotonous routine. Like Carlos breaks that chain for Brave.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so like, okay, so there is this one line in the book that really hit me. It was like, gay men made easy targets, right? And like, I mean, even though the section 377 is scraped off, do you think that there is like, I mean, even though there is still we are at a better position than we were before, but like, how do you suggest we be more inclusive and, be more supportive of people from the community, and like be supportive of artists from the community per se?
Yeah, so that line was written because it was written in the part of the book where section 377 is still in play. So that was something that was used against gay men. Section 377 was used against gay men, sometimes unfortunately in an awful way. People were blackmailed, or people were set up, especially married men who were gay and were had found a guy on the side, and that sort of situation. But what I've noticed really since 377 has gone is I just feel every year Pride becomes stronger and stronger. People, are celebrating Pride Month much more robustly. I feel there are more spaces that are opening up. There's so many new things coming about, right? There's the first Rotary now that's opening up for LGBT and its allies, which is a whole new thing altogether. Axis Bank recently started partners can open an account together, which was never there before. Movies, of course, Bollywood with Fame Game and Badai Do and all these other movies are touching upon this sensibly and in an artistic way. They're doing it sensibly in the sense of realistically. They're not doing caricatures that they were doing earlier, or doing sort of, spoofy, fun lines about it. They're doing it more realistically. The fashion world also, there's a lot of trans fashion happening. So it's happening in different pockets. The corporate world is also waking up. You have so many places that now have his, her, and they restrooms, right? Which is something that was needed. So it's happening in pockets. There is a lot of change happening. But I feel there still needs to be a lot more on all fronts. Even in literature, we have a trickle of books, a couple of books every year that come in which deal with LGBTQ themes. Why? When we have such a strong LGBTQ population, when there's so many stories and there's so much happening, why is it still, just a few, like literally just a couple, maybe 3-4 at the max? Then there is like Queer Ink, which is a publishing house that only publishes LGBTQ novels, that happens. But I'm talking about the big publishers, why aren't they taking on more novels that deal with this in different scenarios? It could be a queer horror. We haven't read a queer horror. How wonderful would that be? So there's so many different genres. Yeah, there's so many different genres. A queer Western, a gay Western, a gay horror, whatever. I mean, there's so many different things that haven't been explored. So I think it's changing. I see progress happening, like literally with, the other day I went to Soho House, which is a private members club in Mumbai. And there was a Pride pop-up happening, which was great. I don't think that would have happened 3 years ago when Section 377 was there, So I think it's all slowly coming out. Forums like yours are talking about it, which is great. And we need more places that do talk about it. There are, of course, parties happening where people can meet up. And of course, the apps are there, which is always a great way to meet other gay men or women, So that is there. But there is a lot more happening. I mean, I'm definitely seeing so much more since 377 was knocked down, which is great, which is really wonderful and, positive.
Yeah, I mean, indeed, I really get very happy when people, very openly talk about it and are very positive about it. But even though that there have been these many changes, but specifically when it comes to media and literature, a lot of it is when people write about queer people or people from the community, it's often from a perspective of a straight author, right? So do you think even in movies that we see sometimes, they are not usually made, the directors are not from the community, they're just straight in. So do you think that the media as a whole justifiably represents the queer community? How can media be more inclusive of it?
I mean, I think the media, honestly, I've been in the media for 20 years and over 20 years, or maybe might be even close to 25 years now. But I feel they're actually one of the most inclusive spaces, actually, frankly. I've always found that they're very progressive minded. Now, you have to understand, they're also keeping up with how things are changing around them. So as more events and more stories and things come about, they can only report that. They have been doing their bit. I feel they can definitely, one thing I definitely feel, which I would love to see is, a columnist, maybe every week of the month, you have a columnist. One week it's somebody who's gay, 1 week it's somebody who's lesbian, 1 week it's somebody who's non-binary. You have a columnist talking about that. I don't see that. You see columnists on humor, and you see columnists on politics, and you see columnists on film. But I don't see LGBT columnists that way, just talking about LGBT subjects. It could be humorous, it could be, straightforward. That's a separate thing. So that's something that can definitely come about. So there are, but it all really depends on the people, who are working in that space for them to push it out. But I do think the media has been doing a great job that way all throughout. They've always been very supportive and they've tried their best in whatever way. I think Bollywood faced a lot of flack for doing caricatures and stuff, but today they're really pulling up their socks and, doing stuff that's more realistic. When it comes to whether you definitely, a story will be more meaningful if the person himself is queer, him or herself or they self is queer and writes that story. It will definitely be more meaningful. That said, I've heard that now in films and stuff like that, if the director's not queer, they're passing the story to somebody who's queer to point out what the issues are. So to make it more realistic. So they are having those checks and balances in place. But definitely, if the person themselves have gone through that journey, you'll feel it more. And I feel that's why a lot of people connected with this book more, because a lot of it, was in some sense my journey too that I put in. I understood what the whole process of coming out was like. It would be very difficult for a straight person to write that, even if they spoke to 50 friends about it. That feeling and the small little things that go into it, it's difficult. So sure, definitely. But that said, I mean, eventually it just depends on whether that book or film is really meaningful. That is the most important thing. What does it really do? But I would, of course, definitely like it if it were from the LGBT community who's writing and, making those films. There's nothing like it, right? Because they just get it full frontal. They really understand what the whole issue is about and get deeper into it than just surface level,
Yeah, absolutely. Because there are a lot of intricacies to it also, apart from personal experience too. Right. So I mean, thank you, sir. It is always a pleasure to have an interaction with you, honestly. I'm really pumped up for another session also. So I'll ask this question to the audience also. So what do you think about the representation in media? Guys can raise your hands and then we'll recognize the speakers. Okay. Kushi.
First of all, good evening, sir. It was really an honor to be part of this interaction because I personally, I am a media student as well. So there was a lot of, relatability throughout the thing, being a journalist, being a critique, and how it works. When we are talking literally about media representation, it is something that I am studying. So I feel like it is an attack on me to think about what am I doing. And I am studying media with psychology. So connecting the, two things that require behavior and representation of behavior together, I feel that media have lately improved a lot. And as you said also, representation has increased a lot, especially when I recently watched this series called The Fame Game, in which the character of Avi and the hesitation to come out of the closet and the hesitation to try out various things before you actually accept that you are gay has been portrayed in a very naturalistic manner than portraying it in a way that you are different and there is something wrong with you, and how society may or may not accept you. It takes a lot of courage to be out, and that is a beautiful representation. And if we see the boundaries that have changed from how it was represented earlier and how it is represented now, even this famous movie Badhai Do, and how it was the mushy love and how it is very positively represented. I duly agree that still there are a lot of media houses who I would not name in particular, but they do generally go against it, have a lot of things against it. uh, I recently watched one more series called Leela. In that also there was the entire representation of how we portray the society to be as, and
Mhm.
how there was representation of LGBTQ in a very different and not so naturalistic manner. But I do agree that media, especially the books and movies, with the help of Gen Z, that is the the latest generation, have done a lot of things to bring a change in how this organization also is running one of the campaigns, DiversiPride, and how this is happening again with the help of media and online education as a system that we are utilizing well. So this is what I feel.
Yeah, you're completely right. That's completely true. And honestly, the more discussions we have like this, the more discussions that are there, the more films that are there, the more books that are there, the more knowledge that is out there. That's all we really need. We need more accessibility to knowledge about not seeing a foreign film, not seeing Call Me By Your Name or Brokeback Mountain or things like that, which were gay movies earlier, but seeing them out here. There was that other great serial about which was based on the Marriage Company, which did really well, where a guy and a girl run a marriage and marriage making company, and the guy is gay out there, which did
Made in
really well.
Heaven.
Made in Heaven, correct. Made in Heaven was a great breakthrough also. So there is a lot of representation happening, and really the more discussions like this that we have, that's what really we need, frankly.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you, Kushi. Labhanshi, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So first of all, thank you so much for recognizing me. Plus, I really enjoyed the session with Sir because I was so pumped up with because Rajasri has hyped up the session so much that I was so excited for it. And trust me, that just exceeded my expectations. Throughout the session, I was just nodding and smiling because I could just, I was so mesmerized, and I just messaged Rajasri that, my book is coming out soon. Like, I am a published poet, so I'll be writing one more book because Sir has hyped me so much that I am thinking of going ahead with one more. But I also want to say that I do agree with Sir, like, on so many points, that the hesitation of not just presenting a very different view into the audience, but the hesitation to even write about it, it's somewhat there, but it's like the criticism, that is something that it's very fearful. I'm very fearful of the criticism. But yes, if even one or two people read my book, that will be a very, very big thing for me. But as for the if I talk about the LGBTQ community and the queer media or literature that I talk about. I've read several books. I have even, read the Chinese literature called Moda Zushi. It's one of the very famous queer literature over there in China. And the representation of the book was very fine, but when it came to the media, I mean, a drama was made out of it. It was so subtle that it didn't, reflect the intricacies of what actually queer literature depicts. So yes, we do have like a very long way to go, but I think we are coming more forward with the things that, because of the Gen Z thing, as Khushi mentioned, we are coming forward with so many things, and awareness is definitely being spread. But also we don't have to forget that we do have still have a very very long way to go. I mean, just bringing down the section 377, it was just the first milestone, but it's like a very very long way, because there are, even like right now, even though we have the Fame Game, we have other movies like the Raido, but there still exist some movies which criticize LGBTQ community, queer media, and it's like not in a very respectful manner. So I think criticism is very important when it comes to criticizing the right thing, but also be mindful of the things that needs to be appreciated. So yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah, that's completely true. And I'll just tell you one thing, that don't fear about criticism. Don't stop your writing because of that, because there will always be criticism. Like, irrespective whether in your writing or the way you want to live your life, people will criticize. And with Twitter and trolls, and you know what I mean, people are being criticized all the time. So forget about that. Just concentrate on your poetry, put it out there, and don't worry about all those things like criticism. That's all inconsequential stuff. But true, we have a long way. We still don't have same-sex marriages as of yet, right? That's still not happened, and that's the next stepping stone for it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ahana, you can go next.
Yeah, so I feel like there should be more representation in terms of India, because as you said, I've seen a lot of Western films. Call Me by Your Name actually is my favorite film, and I feel like, just like, other than the gay aspect, I think there should be films, for bisexuality and trans love stories. And there's much more to Pride than just defining your own sexuality. It's about the complex feelings that you go through. It's about heartbreak, like the ones that sometimes you feel them, sometimes you accidentally hurt other people, like complex feelings like that. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say.
Yeah,
Plus,
that's right.
yeah, India is lacking literature, and like there needs to be more representation of the community. So I recently saw this film called Cobalt Blue, which, like, it sort of gave me Call Me by Your Name vibes, but it was a little bit it was a bit more complex than that. So yeah, that I really like the visual aspect of the film, but it was very how do you say, very unsettling in a way, because it left you hanging till the end. Yeah.
And it's based on a book. Cobalt Blue is also based on a book,
Yeah.
which was much before Call Me by Your Name, frankly.
Mhm.
The movie came out. So it is something, but that's true. I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. Pride is a celebration of so many more things, but it's also a huge celebration of love. I mean, I think that's what really Pride is about. The biggest thing, it's a celebration of love. And that's what I love the most about it. But sure, of course, the isolation, all the problems that you spoke about, the heartbreak, but all those things make us who we are, right? Eventually, I mean, that's what leads us on our journey. I mean, that's what makes us fight for the things we want. That's what shapes us. Even if they're difficulties, true, but that's what we endure to become who we become.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed a fulfilling and amazing experience interacting with you. In fact, there were so many parts which resonated with me so much that I cannot even put it into words. But on that note, I think we'll move ahead with the event. So, Rajasvi, over to you.
Yes. So, sir, before we come to an end, is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience?
I'd just like to say firstly, thank you to all of y'all. Rajashree, especially because you put me in touch with Aspirant, and I'm so happy to be addressing a group of Gen Z and youngsters today because you all are truly the future. And keep that in mind. We want to hear your stories. We want to know what's happening at your end. Please write more books, make more films, do theater if theater is your thing, but put it out there. We'd love to know more stories. We'd love to hear more stories, So I wish you all the best, all the authors. I heard a couple of people who, one is a poet, and I'm sure there are more authors in the audience, who are still keeping quiet about it. But all the best, just work on it and go for it, and it'll all work out. Trust me, it all just works out eventually. So thank you.
Thank you so
Can
much.
I talk about something, like, if it's okay? Can I?
We can definitely, sir. Sir, like, is ready to state.
Yeah, no problem. I have no problem at all. Sure, go ahead.
Sure. Ahana, over to you.
So I am into prose and like writing about stories. I'm not into poetry that much. I'm more into the lengthier part. So I have a lot of stories, and I have been pretty skeptical about sending them forward to people or showing it to them. But yeah, like, this session sort of gave me a push to jumpstart my journey. And plus, I'm into art, like, of various forms. I'm into storytelling. I love hearing stories. So yeah, I really do appreciate theater as well. So it's kind of like, I want to do a bit of everything.
Yeah, and that's
So,
great. Yeah. And just go
yeah.
for it. Honestly, don't let anything hold you back. Don't let criticism hold you back. Don't let the worry of who will read my book hold you back. Because I had all those same doubts myself. Trust me, I had all those doubts. Who will read my book? Will anybody be interested? Just forget about all that. Just go for it. Write it, send out, like I told you, do a little synopsis of 500 words so you know what your story is about. Then flesh out that story properly. Once you're ready with it, you can show it to a friend if that's your way of working, or just send it out to publishing houses online. You get a lot of feedback. Even if they say, no, we don't like your story, they'll tell you why we don't like your story. So you'll understand what are the areas you've gone wrong in also. So it'll give you also a little bit of reworking, and then you can send it out to other publishing houses, or you can publish it online also. There's so many avenues today, honestly, online is a big space. You can put it on your own Instagram today. You can put poetry and people love it, So don't let anything hold you back, which is inconsequential besides the writing of it, besides your feeling and besides your writing. Just put your feelings on paper, put what you want to talk about. It doesn't matter. That's it. Just go for it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I mean, this session has been nothing short of motivating and inspiring for everybody here. And it's always a pleasure to interact with you, always. Thank you so much for coming. I hope we stay associated in the future as well.
Sure, definitely. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah. Bye. Bye.
Okay, moving on. Tanisha, did you know?
ही उस बड़े घर में, दैट वाज माय कहते बिगेस्ट अचीवमेंट. आई वाज नॉट लुकिंग एट द कप कि कप कैसा है या किस चीज का है. सो देयर आर वेरियस लेयर्स एंड द वे स्टोरी टेलिंग कहते होता है दैट हैपेंस इन लेयर्स ओनली. वो आइसोलेशन में नहीं होता कि वी आर जस्ट focusing on the romanticizing idea of Call Me by Your Name. I'm a big fan of that film, but regarding the Indian aspect of LGBT film, there is only happiness or कहते the love idea or aspect of, there is no operation or कहते the layers on which कहते that deals with the LGBT. I mean there is continuously कहते हैं जो privilege है, that privileged person can be open up and they can be accepted in a society. But if you will go to a much conventional society, if you will go to a village or कहते much more कहते diverse areas of rural areas, you will find कि they don't have even कहते option ही नहीं है उनके पास. They will be forced to even सुसाइड के लिए they will be forced. उनके पास ऑप्शन नहीं है कि खुल के बात करने का. I remember कि there is a guy who was making a film about कहते sex toys in India, and he was basically trying to show कि किस तरीके से sex toys are very कहते taboo and ऐसा करके, but there is a market or India में भी they are being produced. But when you will talk about कहते if you are dealing with a subject that's so important, you have to understand कि rural areas या फिर इन जगह पे there are characters like Bharti, they exist like इतने साल के films के बाद, and someone was talking about the Indian film industry being the second highest number of films making, but there is still the first film being a Dalit character, being a LGBT character in a mainstream film is कहते हैं वही सोचने वाली बात है. And there are like अच्छे representation and there are good films in India, but that is called Indian cinema. Nagar Kirtan being one of the best LGBTQ representation, Bengali film, and there is one by Memories in March, and वहाँ पे फिर representation पता चलता है when a queer character is portraying the character. And not just even the only criticism I can think of this film, this short film, was the representation thing, that if you are telling a story about any character that those are in minority, just consider them having a play. उनको कहने दो उनकी बात, just don't go and talk about for themselves.
Yeah, thank you. I think all of us got some really good recommendations when Mahi was speaking, because I think so through Mahi also I have also found a lot of these films. Like recently we watched a few. There are films in India which have done a good job, but those are so indie, so कि वो mainstream में नहीं देखी जाती है. Which is why we feel कि Shubh Mangal Zara Savdan was the first time a gay character was being portrayed. No, that's not true. Mainstream में शायद पहली बार लोगों को लग रहा है ऐसा आया है. But I think that's the limit. I wouldn't say a limitation of indie films, but that's just the market that they capture is fairly micro or limited in that sense. Khushi, you want to go ahead next?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for recognizing me again. Firstly, whatever Mani said, I agree to a lot of things, that like how the representation in our society is also changing, and how everything with regards to how movies are taking them into consideration is also changing. When I talk about the movie, there's a very unique quality in this movie that is rarely found actually, if we see so. In this movie there is a common admiration towards, like, both the characters have towards each other, even when they realize that their sexuality is different. So there's a clear portrayal towards how gender is different from sexuality, and how these things hold a different aspect in one's life, which is not merely shown in other A roles and B roles of respective movies, if we talk about. And in this there was this one shot in which Bharti was sitting and reminiscing about her old lover, and as soon as she is doing so, there's a zoom in angle that is a jump cut towards the void in the room, that made us realize that how people are actually comfortable when they're alone, when they are the room is everything to them when they're within the closet. So that is also one of the very beautiful aspects that is being highlighted, that sometimes people are not even comfortable within the closet by the community itself, and sometimes even when they're outside the closet, then also there are a lot of things that differ from person to person, from gender to gender, and how what is the family background, again the double oppression, triple oppression, systematic collateral division towards the society that one belongs to. So these are the few points which I think about and came to my mind after listening to the other speakers.
So those are really interesting points. Thank you for bringing that up again, Khushi. Lavanshi, you want to go ahead next?
Yes, definitely. So one thing that Khushi highlighted was the Bharti ka perspective in terms of the, whatever she was going through. But I would also like to highlight the perspective of Aditi Rao Hegde. I'm not sure about the character's name though. But she had a sense of internalized homophobia. Like, is that right or is that not? The one line that she said that, "Kya mujhe koi dikkat hai? Kya mujhe doctor ke paas jana chahiye?" So this is something that a general mindset is there within the people that even if we discuss it with my mom or my parents, they are like, "Acha, this is a disease," and even like because I'm a psychology student, I know that in 19 it was 1953 when DSM they actually did off with the homophobia as a disease. So it was then when people discovered that homosexuality is not a disease, but there's still this mindset of people that homophobia is a disease, and people have internalized it so much that this depiction is somewhat, I think it is reflected in our media. And as we can obviously see in the TV Kuchi as well, that Aditi Rao Hegde had that reflection of internalized homophobia. And if we talk about Bharti, she was very well with her sexuality. But uska agar, like, I think that the journey is more important than the conclusion. So even if, like Khushi mentioned, ki, when we are alone, we feel more secure. अगर वो aspect पे थोड़ा और reflect करे, even like I'm talking about the general media, if they reflect more on the journey, the mindset of the people, what they go through, then I think people would be better able to understand what LGBTQ community is and what they go through on daily basis, because that is not something that we can understand. We might understand, but as general audience or just layman, I don't think we might be able to understand. So I think that journey should be reflected more. And yeah, so that is my perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, those are really good points. Thank you for bringing that up, Lapanshi. Thank you so much. We'll move to Anna, and after Anna speaks, I'll bring a new question to freshen up things. Anna, please go ahead.
So yeah, as we were talking about how it was known as a disease back in the 1950s and before that, this actually reminds me of this film that I watched a few weeks ago. So there's this like, it's completely off topic, but the end of the film was quite upsetting for me. As I'll give thoda sa overview uska. There's this film called The Imitation Game. It is set in World War II wala era, where the British government they hired 6 mathematicians, 6 professors to break Germans ka code just say they communicate, which was Enigma. So like the brilliant one, the main character in the film, he was brilliant at what he did, and he did save the Britishers from a huge loss, but so he was meant to keep it a secret. And the policemen, the regular policemen, as the government didn't tell anyone about it, the regular policemen were a little suspicious about him. And so they were trying to find dirt on him. They found out that he was gay. They started putting him on. First, they were gonna, like, us time sunwai hui thi, and they put him on medication, which led him to, because as he's a mathematician, he was a gifted mathematician. He was deprived of his talents because of the medications he was taking. It was messing with his brain, and that led him toward the suicide, which was a which is an actual story, though it is based on a true story. It's Alan Turing's story. And it actually upsets me a lot of how people used to struggle before the Stonewall riots, because we're talking about the LGBTQIA plus community. So yeah, so this instance made me think of that film, how upsetting it is for people to feel such things and feel deprived of their own rights, of their own happiness in a community that they live in.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a lovely film, I think. And yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch is as good as ever in that film. Yes. So before moving to Anshika, I'd just like to bring a new question, if she can, mix up and talk about it. The question is more to do with the character of the boss, the main boss who was there. I liked his character a lot because the way it was written, मतलब काफी meat था उस character में. So okay, let me play the devil's advocate here, ताकि थोड़ा सा लगे कि मैं I sound a little wrong and you can correct me and ताकि थोड़ा मसाला कर सके हम बातों में. But so I want to say उस बॉस की गलती क्या थी? Like वो तो सबको केक भी बंटवा रहा था, अच्छे से ट्रीट भी कर रहा था. मुझे तो ज्यादा कुछ गलत लगा नहीं उसकी बातों में. मतलब he never actually shouted at anybody गलत तरीके से. उसने कभी किसी को ऐसा तो बोला नहीं कि तू दलित है या जो भी है. So what was really wrong with the character then? Anjika, you can start with your points and this as well.
Hi guys. My first, so I just watched that movie again because मैंने 6 बजे वाला सेशन ज्वाइन कर लिया था गलती से, तो मैंने सोचा एक बार मूवी वापस देख के आती हूँ. तो in this film, I think after 15 minutes, when both the characters got introduced, after 15 minutes, the sexual inclination takes a back seat because it was a layered operation. So the sexual inclination takes a back seat and basically the cast plays its role in front. So since Aditi Rao Hadri, Preeti's character, she was an upper caste woman, comes from a privileged background, got the job because of her privileges, from her privileges. And I have seen such women who gets the access somewhere just because of their privileges. And the character is so well written क्योंकि there are some very stupid stories that she tells कि वो खुद बताती है कि मैंने कविता के साथ ये किया था, मैंने उसकी स्कर्ट रेड कर दी थी और ये. एंड व्हेन शी गोज टू दैट दही बड़ा वाला शॉप और जब वो उसको वापस से बताने लगती है कि तुमने कविता के साथ ये किया था, शी वाज लाइक कि आप कितनी गंदी गंदी बातें करते हो. मतलब वो खुद की स्टोरी है, उसकी खुद की स्टोरी उसने खुद से नरेट करी है. और जब उसको रिपीट किया जा रहा है, सिंस इट इज अ पब्लिक प्लेस, तो वो हश शू वाला जो एक होता है कि बाहर जाके ये बातें नहीं करनी चाहिए, ऐसे नहीं बोलना चाहिए, तो वो बिहेवियर को इतने ब्यूटिफुली पोर्ट्रे किया है. प्लस कमिंग बैक टू योर क्वेश्चन, हाँ वो आदमी तो बहुत अच्छा था, केक देता था, बट उसको टॉयलेट बनाने का याद नहीं आया जब तक भारती काम कर रही थी. तब तक नहीं याद आया. जब प्रीति आती है तो उसको याद आता है कि नहीं, अभी हमें विमेन टॉयलेट बना लेना चाहिए. सो दैट वाज हिज प्रॉब्लम. And talking about Bharti's character, so she was never accepted in that environment, even as a woman or as somebody who can have different. She was always like कि एक बंदा आके लिटरली उसके मुंह पे बोलता है कि ज्यादा देर घूर मत, तेरी दाढ़ी मुंह से निकल आएगी. मतलब such statements. And I don't think that Preeti was homophobic. Basically, she was unaware because she has lived in a closet, not only because of her sexuality, because of multiple aspects, because of her caste, because she is Brahmin. तो होता है, मतलब ऐसे सेटअप में ऐसा कंडीशनिंग हो जाता है आफ्टर अ पॉइंट. एंड वही है कि मतलब इंडिपेंडेंस नहीं सीखा. So I don't think she was homophobic. Otherwise, yeah, that was my point.
Okay, thank you, Anshika. Guys, could you please just make sure?
I am removing.
Yes. I mean, whoever's listening, I'm sorry for why it's happening. Yeah. Khushi, please go ahead.
Right, I have removed that person. I'm so sorry for that. Give me a second. Yes. So as I mentioned earlier that I am, one of the media students. So I am a psychology student. So I'm doing both the things. So I tend to relate both the things. I don't know how many of you actually did notice But if you see the entire movie, it's a representation of two colors, orange and blue. So when representing ice and fire, all right, so and blue collar workers, if you may see. So when you see that way, the as soon as the main characters Priya and Bharti are being introduced, Aditi Rao is wearing an orange sari, emphasizing the power over the blue, that is how Bharti is dressed up in the entire story. Similarly, when we talk about, the perspective that you gave towards the boss, only the boss room is in red and orange color. Apart from that, the entire factory is in blue color. So when you think about it, intentionally, I believe that yes, the restroom point was very on point towards it, that yes, he is not doing anything wrong, but unconsciously, consciously, if I may say so, the engraved things that are there within the society, then how actually, there is a representation of oppression. Sexuality is still a secondary thing right now when we're talking about him. The oppression within the gender is something that is being considered from, as I said, the basic nuisances and the very basic structure of the movie that is being produced or directed towards it. So howsoever there's a representation and how the color palette has been chosen is itself showing the regards जो हम starting से बोल रहे हैं कि oppression हो रहा है, and it's not only the community. So and even when we are the washroom thing and the lunch box, the sharing of lunch box on one same table, and how when one of the worker got injured and how it was the entire scenario, the reaction of the boy towards it, it's like something that we tend to ignore, जो हमें लगता है कि ठीक है, that's normal, that is something that happens, but that is not normal is what the story actually very subtly explains in the entire discussion, is what I feel.
Yeah, I loved your point about the colors, because I think people forget to notice these things when they watch a film. because ये दूसरी या तीसरी viewing पे शायद लोगों को ध्यान में आए, कभी आए तो आए, like the colors or the smaller details in the production and all of that. So apart from this, I think there were a lot of other symbolisms that were there in the film. So if anyone would like to talk about any other symbolism that were there, but I think before that, I think Mahi had raised his hand. So do you have a point to add, Mahi?
Yeah. So I actually loved all the points of Kurkusi, and I'm also a media student, but plus psychology. So yeah, I can understand. But regarding the question, ki the guy, what was wrong with him? So that is the problem with every person that is कहते हैं उस level पे. He does not understand कि उसका problem क्या है, and he is basically very nice और केक बांटने वाला और जो भी problem solver वगैरह. But the problem is कि see there are two kinds of people. One who will acknowledge कि उसके अंदर बुराइयां है, and he will not try to उसके साथ कहते हैं ठीक है, I'll try to show अपना I'll be pretentious, I'll try to show nice person और कहते सारा कुछ हो जाएगा. But they will show his कहते true colors, and they will react to अपने हिसाब से that is suitable for him. But the problem is कि people are very nice. People if you will come, कहते कितना भी घटिया से घटिया homophobic person को if you will come to in this meeting, उनको लेकर के आ जाओ, they will be nice. What a film, what representation, everything, they will talk nice. But the problem is that they don't want to accept their homophobia. They don't want to accept their कि हाथ दिखाने के लिए कहते उन्होंने बोला कि मैंने तो सिर्फ हाथ दिखाया था कि आपकी मैं हाथ पढ़ लेती और उसकी वजह से उसको जॉब मिल गया. And that's the thing कि I mean कलर का या फिर पोजीशन का that is बात का thing. Just because he was Brahmin और कहते he was Dalit, उसके अलग है, उसको कंप्यूटर का सारा कुछ आता है, but still he can't get that position. और उसको नीचे रह करके there is workers room and everything, and he will try to play nice. The problem is that we are not ready to accept the problems. I mean, if I'll be happy to be in a room where people will be more accepting, more controversies, they will be more critique of the thing, but they are not ready to do that. They will be accepting, they will be try to play nice और कहते सबके साथ मिलजुल करके, and that is the problem of every person at the higher institutional, that if that person will behave badly, he will not be accepted by his firm, or he can't show that true colors, and that's one of the layers of oppression that one has to face at that level. I mean, I'm just watching The Boys ka third season, and there's a character of Homelander that is the highest level of कहते हैं institution, and he's the boss of कहते हैं God का level पे, and he just talks about his loneliness, that when he's at the top he's lonely, and उसकी कहते character थी Maeve, जिसके साथ he was in a romantic relationship, but when she found out कि Homelander is that कहते just behaving nice और ऐसा करके, she just कहते left him, and he is trying to dealing with the fact that he has this power, he has this position, but still he can't find कहते allies, and he talks about कि at least we were lonely together. वो मेरे को there is a very emotional dialogue that we were at the top, we had powers, but we were lonely together. We didn't have anyone to converse, and we had to discuss, and we had to understand their point of view. That's the problem. If you can show your colors, if you're ready to have a conversation, have a dialogue, rather than accepting and saying everything is fine, everything is nice. That's the problem of whole society. They are not ready to accept their
but again, I mean, the thing is, something like that comes out of a place of insecurity, right? Because if we see it from just a structural sense, so anybody who's in power will feel insecure when slightly bhi isko nudge kiya jaye in some sense or the other. So her becoming an accountant would mean that she has climbed the ladder in one sense, right? So
Continue.
So that would mean she has climbed the ladder and reached a point where she can sort of take over, or like वो कूप कर सकती है उसके ऊपर एक तरीके से. So what she was told was also that you are the best foreman है या जो भी है, you in your best machine man है तू हमारे यहाँ पे, and you could become the superintendent of that particular foremanship. So they'll let you, or they'll provide it the opportunity till the point कि आप अपने hierarchy में top पे आ सको. Not that you can change the hierarchy, and मतलब वो osmosis नहीं हो सकता. Like it's not that easy. So I think उस level तक लोग liberal होते हैं, and काफी बार वो show के लिए भी होता है. So केक बांट दो तो sure, मतलब example कोई बोले कि मेरे घर पे आता हूँ मैं पानी पिलाता हूँ, तो bro तो पानी तो पिलाना ही होता है ना, मतलब इसमें कौन सी बड़ी.
That's the problem, and इसकी वजह से they are not oppressing, they are not the oppressor only, they are also being oppressed. I mean, अगर उसने भारती को पहले रख लिया होता जॉब पे तो उसका काफी सेविंग्स होता, काफी पैसे उसके बच जाते, बट जस्ट बिकॉज ऑफ द कहते जिस तरीके से सिचुएशन है, जिस तरीके से समाज ने सेटअप कर दिया है, दैट नॉर्म्स की वजह से ही इज नॉट रेडी टू एक्सेप्ट कि उसको मैं इस पोजीशन पे ला सकता हूँ. एंड दैट्स द प्रॉब्लम. आई मीन, ऑपरेशन वहीं पे होगा कि ऑपरेस्ड आर आल्सो बीइंग ऑपरेस्ड, but they are not understanding their oppressor until and unless they will understand that we have to break this hierarchy or this institutionalized जो भी फिक्स कर दिया गया है, they are not getting कहते हैं उसकी वजह से. एंड I was मैं किसी की बात सुन रहा था, there is a friend of mine जो भी कहते रूरल एरियाज में NGO वगैरह में काम करती है, एंड उन्होंने एक पॉइंट बताया था that if you will see the privilege of the difference between a Brahmin girl or a Dalit girl, there is a difference कि Dalit girl या Dalit woman is not much being कहते oppressed. They have a voice, they are more fierce, they are more establishing, dominating their voice, they can fight for themselves. But if you see a Brahmin girl raising in a higher conservative family, and uska, she does not have a voice. She always has this bodyguard, uska bhai ya fir uska papa to support him and to go. And that's the problem, that they not just कहते इस structure की वजह से सिर्फ और सिर्फ वो oppress नहीं कर रहे, they are also being oppressed. That's what they have to understand. Yeah.
Thank you for those points, Mai. Let's move to Lavanshi. Again, let's try to stick to the film for now, and then we'll move to the general topics.
Before that, I just have a very interesting insight as to what Mani Bhushan just mentioned. That Dalit women are coming up with their voices and Brahmins are not. Well, to this, I would just like to highlight the very few incidents that
I think it's some issue.
We had in the past years. Beaten, am I audible?
You can go from the start.
Now you are.
Yes. So I'm saying that I would just like to highlight the incidents that happened in the recent years, that even though a Dalit woman came up with a voice, she started opinionating. She started basically raising her voice against the things in the society, but she was beaten to death. And I clearly remember it was like 1.5 years ago when this girl and her sister were beaten to death. Even some politicians who may not be named right now, since this is a live stream that is going on. So some of the politicians even visited their house, and they were not allowed in the inside of the village, and they were living like on the outside. So basically, it was a complete mess, right? But if we see, on the other hand, if we see what Brahmins are going through, let me remind you that the first Indian woman who was educated, who did her graduation and her masters, was a Brahmin. So that's not like Dalits are can they can raise their voice, and Brahmins cannot. The thing is that we often forget the consequences when they raise their voice and when they do not. So I think it uh, saying that Dalit women can raise their voice and Brahmins cannot. It's kind of justifying the oppression that is being done against the Dalits. So yeah, that was my point. And again,
Thank you for
coming back to the topic that we are here to discuss.
Yes, let's everybody let's be on that for now. Yes.
Yeah, please. So to celebrate the Pride Month, we have kept this, in collaboration with Abstract Room. Aspirant Learning has kept this discussion. So I would really, really appreciate if we could stick to that topic. Anyone has any insight on that?
Yeah. Yes. Kushi, I think raised your hand. Please, Kushi, go ahead. I think the topic you're trying to talk about, for example, Kushi had mentioned about the colors as one of the symbolisms that were there. If you could highlight some of the other symbolisms, if you guys can remember some, then uske baare mein baat karte hain. Film ke bare mein. Yes, Kushi.
Yes. So when we are talking about representation of gender within the movie, then I feel that how initially she used to give her flat for Aditi and her husband, and how actually things took a turn later on. There was also a kind of vivid description towards the direction of the movie as well, with regards to how the cuts are being used, and initially also as I mentioned, how there was an emphasis on the void that is being controlled within the room, and she was missing her earlier love. So when we think about that, the representation in the movies also revolves around the realistic approach towards, it's not easy for oneself also to accept things. It's not easy for oneself also to be comfortable with someone. Initially, she told her entire name different to the cast. Later on, she did reveal that she's Banerjee, and how the cast came into picture. But not only that, her acceptance towards herself, as Labhanshi also initially told, that how we sometimes do not actually tend to differentiate or discriminate ourselves, but we have a fear of doing so.
Yeah.
So डरने की वजह से what all steps we actually take is also very clearly represented in the movie, rather than hiding it apart or totally excluding it from the process of coming out.
That's an interesting point you made. Talking about because I'm coming back to what Kushi had said earlier about the colors. I think एक और काफी interesting aspect था in the way, so because film is a visual medium, तो खाली बोलने के अलावा बहुत अर्थ और तरीकों से बयां की जाती है बातें. So for example, the very fact that it's a very simple symbolism, but that she used to work underground and उसका office ऊपर था, so that hierarchical symbolism is obviously there. Apart from also the fact that जो end में, I think my favorite moment in the film was जो end में उसको steel का cup मिलता है. First उसको steel का cup मिलना, and एकदम nonchalantly, एकदम unapologetically, she's been given that cup by the mother-in-law, जिसको हाँ मतलब ये तो ऐसे ही होता है ना. So that aspect of it, and how proudly she picks it up at the end. Like there's this sense of smugness. Like Konkona is one of the best actors we have in our country. Okay, so when she picks that up and drinks with that smugness in her eyes, I think just owning your identity at that point was something that was reflected in that particular scene. So that steel ka cup was genuinely, matlab, beautifully done. And this is what the director is known for. I'm not who do you guys know who's the writer? I'm not very sure who has written the film. Because the director is Neeraj Gaiwan, who made Masala.
Yeah, I think he has written the film.
Acha. Okay. Yes, Kushi.
Yeah, so I was adding to that. Similar symbolism is there. I don't know if you all remember that, but when they go to eat dahi bala, dahi papdi, whatever. So and there was added salt, the sauce, to the Priya ki plate, but not to Bharti's plate. So and it was very normal of she not loving spicy food or she not wanting to have it, but there was a pan shot on the two plates, and this very thing, how both the things are same but yet different, using the food representation was clearly depicted with the help of very mere bhalla plates, and how one is having salt, one is not having salt, both being food items similar in taste but yet different. And this was actually, the food shot is actually there, the closer food shot and differentiation is in all the four anthologies of Ajib Dasta. And this is a very again, it's a kind of symbolism that direction has taken forth in how actually the representation is being done there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think food played such an important role over here, and the symbolism of food kept on changing because when she went to Kunkana's house and they had chicken, so for her there was a form of liberation as well. They were in the closet in a way, but it was a form of liberation because she's able to eat chicken after so long. So food again represented something. Shuru mein, when they were, there was this sense of distrust between them. Usko bhindi offer karti, but she doesn't take it. Later on, they try to bring different kinds of food. Usko khilati hai pehle apne haath se. So that becomes a way to show how things have changed for them. I think food is there in every other scene. Even cake plays an important role in that way. Like ande wala cake or bina ande wala cake, and this. Like I think food is such an important character. And also one more thing I noticed was the glass office that the main boss had. So I've seen that a lot in real life as well. But it shows, right, you can look inside out and outside in, but आप जा नहीं सकते अंदर बिना permission के. So I think it, on a very meta level, it plays a very, it messes up with your mind when you think about it, because she's just standing outside and looking at them having fun, and the life outside the cabin and inside the cabin are so drastically different. So I think that was another aspect I really liked about the film, the way it was portrayed. But I want to get into talking we'll after this couple of points, and then we'll try to talk about general about just the kaise celebration hota, and we'll wrap it up soon. But one question I had was, so would you consider what Bharti did in the end from a character standpoint, जो भारती ने end में किया, would you consider it wrong, like morally or ethically, would you consider it wrong? And what do you make of the climax? Like उसके बाद क्या हुआ, या फिर what would be a part 2 of this film for you? Anna, please. We'll stick to the topic again, everybody. Yeah, the time nahi hamare paas.
So first up, I feel like having a part 2 of this film would just destroy the whole point of having this film, because I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory from the start to the end what the motive of the short film is. Also, what Bharti did at the end, I feel like, see, ethically speaking, morally speaking, it was wrong. But I mean, if you look at it, nothing, I mean, like according to me, nothing as such is, like nothing is perfect in this world. Everyone does things for themselves. Everyone thinks of themselves at some point. I mean, they should. She, like, ethically and morally, it was wrong. But if you ask me if she did the right thing, I'd say it was right in her own way, because she wanted to progress. She wanted to get somewhere, and she sacrificed Priya for it. So, as I said at the beginning of this of this session, that Aditi Rao Hayatri, she wasn't the best person ever out there. So, as I said, they're both good and bad at their own places. They're both right and wrong at their own places. And I respect what Konkona did. I mean, she did it for herself. She has no one else. She has no friends. She has no one to look up to. She was looking up to someone, but in some ways or the other, because of her internalized fear, even she, let her go. So, yeah, I feel like what she did was right for herself.
Yeah, possibly. I think, and also context matters so much in things like this, right? Ki we know the setting, we know kya situation chal raha hai, and we don't feel too bad when she does something like this. We understand. But if the tables were reversed, if the genders were different, then kitna farak padta when a similar action would have been taken ki kisi aur ke you have been an opportunist. She was an opportunist basically. But again, the context made such a big difference in this particular case over here. Anshika, you want to go ahead next?
Yeah, in my opinion, I don't think she did anything wrong because it was basically reclaiming her power. She was very much deserving of that job, and she knew the whole background story of it. कि कैसे job मिला, कैसे क्या हुआ, and plus while doing her job, she was allotting a lot of works to भारती पहले भी कि तू मेरा ये वाला काम कर दे, मैं तेरा घर यूज कर लूं क्या, मतलब सारी चीजों के लिए उसको बार बार यूज कर रही थी. So she was basically doing her job. That's what the caste, where the caste come, that upper caste people always allot their odd jobs to lower caste people. So basically I think वहां पे ये represent करा था. तो and plus she gave Preeti enough chances in terms of trust, कि पहले भी उसने काफी अपने सीक्रेट्स अपनी सारी चीजें शेयर करने के बाद, एंड आई थिंक द मेन पार्ट वाज नॉट कि उसको स्टील का कप दिया. इट वाज बेसिकली कि जब उसकी ग्रैंड मदर इन लॉ बोलती है कि आपने तो दाई का काम देखा होगा ना, तुम्हारी तो मम्मी ने, प्रीति ने मेरे को बताया और ये सब किया. दैट वाज द मोमेंट वेयर शी वाज लाइक कि नहीं भाई अब तो मेरे को लेना ही पड़ेगा, बिकॉज शी कैन नॉट इवन कीप दैट टू हरसेल्फ. दिस वाज समथिंग जो मैंने तुम्हें बताया था कि आधा सच है एंड अदर हाफ इज दिस पार्ट. तो आई डोंट थिंक, मतलब it was brave of her. It was basically very brave and beautiful of her to do that. क्योंकि जब तुम नहीं हो तो जाके like she can get another job because of her privilege, but that was her only
might
job.
as well.
Yeah,
absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think it's a good note to wrap up the conversation. If anybody has any last points to make about the film or just what the film stood for, या फिर कुछ आपको लगता है हमने बात नहीं की है, any last points फटाफट से. Anna, you wanna go ahead next? We'll just wrap up with whatever.
I'd like to ask what's your viewpoint on this?
Like my viewpoint
on this, like the question you asked, is scenario mein, do you feel that what Konkona Sen Sharma did was ethically and morally right?
See, I believe every situation has a different ethical standard to abide by. So which is why, as I said, context matters a lot. And in this context where we are, it's a film about the rise of the proletariat in a larger sense. So when it's basically वो context में वो बात है ना तो चलता है, ऐसी बात है. For example, very random example, but might just make sense. Having a revolutionary like Sardar Udham makes sense in the context it was in. कि उस टाइम पे जाके उसने उसको शूट किया या जो भी किया, बिकॉज वो कॉन्टेक्स्ट वैसा था, द सिचुएशन उसका ग्रैंडियोसिटी उतना था एंड अर्जेंसी उतना था. बट वो सेम चीज अभी आई एम नॉट वेरी श्योर इफ इट वुड मेक सेंस. आई एम जस्ट मैं अपने एंड से बता रहा था, बट जस्ट कि वो कॉन्टेक्स्ट मैटर्स अ लॉट. To have a violent revolutionary at that point made sense. यहाँ पे जैसे for example to be an opportunist made sense for her because nobody has actually backed her, so she might as well back herself when she's getting a chance. So I mean, morals, ethics don't count, honestly, according to me, in cases like this, especially where characters are so well fleshed out कि अपने को ये standards कौन बनाता है पहली बात तो. So basically, context is all that matters. And yeah, again, that's all there is to it. Yeah. So anybody, any last points you want to wrap up with? Thank you so much, Anand, for that question. Yes. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll hand it over to the team again.
Right. Thank you. Indeed, it was a riveting discussion, and thank you for coming, everybody. Thank you, Abstract Room. It was a thrill to have such amazing people on board. And before leaving, I'd just like to thank all of you for your presence.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much, Aspirant Learning team. Everybody, I hope you had a good time. If you had a good time, please do obviously attend Aspirant Learning sessions at whatever they conduct. But please do check out Abstract Room if you think it's good enough for you to, have such conversations. I think you'll have a good time. You met Mani Bhushan, you met Anshika. Those are two thumbs of abstract in one way or the other. You'll get to meet so many others whenever you get to join us. So please, thank you so much, Aspirant Learning team, for reaching out to us, and hope we can do this again someday soon.
Also, we are doing झुंड का क्या है screening. झुंड का कर रहे हैं ना discussion on our next Sunday. And that is also about marginalized children and their problems. So it's a must watch. हो सके तो attend करना.
Yes, Anshika is moderating that.
Definitely.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night,
so
guys.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.